Right. I'll speak briefly at the beginning and then I will have a right of reply if I feel like I need to. Yes, sorry. The motions are what was in the agenda as the staff recommendations, but there is an additional. Is that, are the letters correct? I think they're starting at K instead of. Okay, cool. So that there's just one, which is a additional in between. It's a new D, or it's a C there. Hold on. So we're into debate on this. This has been obviously an ongoing saga, especially for our communities. There's been a lot of confusion from the beginning of this process. There have been so many pieces to this puzzle, and we're still on that journey. Obviously, the purpose, which we supported, was, housing growth, ensuring that we have options for people around our city, and we know there is a housing crisis and a homelessness crisis in this city. What we have been disappointed with is the fact that this process and the law doesn't allow us to vary based on the city. It has not allowed us to enable changes through hazards post the floods, which everyone is expecting us to do, but the legislation does not enable us to do that. And we had discussions with the previous minister and the current about that. The light rail corridor, now that the Auckland Light Rail has been cancelled, needs to be included. I personally did not support it being left out because I felt this complexity would happen, but there was a majority to leave it out at the time. So that was a personal view that I thought that would create complications, and it has. The MDRS, obviously I believe there is a majority to remove the MDRS or at least vary throughout the city, and the community deserves to have a say on that. The Mayor was clear during his manifesto to pre the election that the council supported the MPSUD, but was keen to have the ability to vary the MDRS. That's the 3 stories around the city, and based on infrastructure constraints and things. What the new minister has said several speeches, given us letters that is clear that he would like councils, despite a future legislation change allowing us to remove ourselves from the MDRS in some way, or shape or form, that he would like us to box on with the MPSUD. What we've obviously seen from independent hearing panel and from a staff advice, that is extremely complex to do so, and we will need to continue to have those discussions with the minister in person next week. The Mayor is meeting him and of course the ministry officials to understand how this can all work in the intermediary time, but also post the legislation, whatever that looks like. My concern is, though, if we do not follow some direction of what the statement of expectations are, we could end up with legislation that forces us into another direction that we don't want to be, which has happened to us a number of times in the last few years. So the minister was very clear that we must continue to implement the MPSUD while they prepare legislation on the medium density residential standards. What we do need, though, is for the minister and the government to move forward with that legislation as soon as possible, so then we know, and officials know, and community knows, who are spending a lot of their time and money on trying to submit on the current process, if that process changes, how that can work. The D is in there, basically requesting the independent hearings panel to show that what the minister's requested and what we've requested, to see if that is possible, and that will give the minister a clear steer on what we can and cannot do as a city. I am worried if we don't show that we are willing to act in the way, the agreement, the letters back and forth, then we could lose the opportunity to vary, and then we end up with doing a different plan change on light rail, a different plan change on hazards, a different plan change potentially on the MDRS after we've completed this whole process. And as the option 4 that was mentioned, we do not have that legal right to pull Plan Change 78, and that may or may not ever happen through legislation. Right, so that is my general view. I've tried to get it, I know there's diverging views across this table. I've tried to figure out how we can get many people's views into this process while also trying to maintain relationships with the government on this.
Order, Mr. Chair.
Next.
Mr. Chair, would you entertain a question from me in relation to D? It is a question of clarification.
Question of clarification is okay, but I don't want to start questions during
No, I'm
debate.
not having a debate with you at this point. I'll speak later on this point. My question is, under D, how many walkable catchments are unaffected and therefore would become operative?
That, as we have not had the advice yet, and I'm talking about becoming operative after hearings process, like the city centre.
Yeah, no, I get that. The question of natural justice around the hearings is a different matter again. We can talk about that. I want to, well, is it 5? Is it 15? Is it 18? I mean, the question for me is, what is the quantum that we're talking about? Because, and can we get anything to clarify that at this stage?
Well, I think we're past that. That's not really clarification. I think we have a councillor swearing over the online process. Yes, unfortunately, no, councillor. So you don't. There won't be advice on that. So you'll have to make your decision. And I'm happy for people to note their opposition to items on there. Councillor Lee, you'd like to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just at the Bay of Islands speaking at a conference, but I thought it'd be a good chance to get away from council routine. I'm still getting over last month's planning meeting. But anyway, we're back into it. I first of all, Mr. Chairman, I wish to strongly.
Sorry, Councillor Lee, we've lost you. We've lost you in the Bay of Islands, sorry.
The Bay of Islands swallowed him up.
Sorry, Councillor Lee, we'll send you a message. Councillor Sayers, you'd like to speak?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm just asking for item D that's been added in to be moved separately from the bulk of the recommendations, and also for item D to be voted on by division.
Yep, that's fine. Thank you. Right, Councillor Henderson, you'd like to speak?
It's come to me a bit earlier than I was expecting, but I'll do my best, Chair. Yeah, look, coming to you live from my townhouse in Te Atatu South, where I absolutely love it. I don't know what's happening here.
Sorry, Councillor Henderson. It seems like Councillor Lee has thought we were listening the whole time, but we lost communication. Oh, he's gone again. Okay. This is the online frustrations.
That's
always
yeah,
at this
that's
committee.
the frustrating. Yeah.
Councillor
Apologies,
Henderson.
Councillor Hills.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Anyway, yeah, I love my townhouse in Te Atatu. That's what I was going to say. But the other thing is I have good news for my colleagues today. We don't talk a lot about a good news story, but I'm not sure if you guys have caught up with the news, but actually all over the world, city planners and city governors are now seeing the evidence out of Auckland from the unitary plan. And we've gone from a basket case to a case study. Data is out now in Auckland, which is showing that our housing policies to liberalise zoning from the previous regime has caused house building to surge to record highs. It has tripled social housing as a share of new housing. It has led to lower rents. It has led to a lower rent and income ratio, right? This is us winning the housing crisis battle. Isn't that good? I wasn't on the council then, but I remember the coverage very clearly on the bitter arguments around the unitary plan going too far, young people presenting to council and being abused and shouted down. Well, what followed was a compromise, and it has done good things. It's done really good things, right? But it hasn't gone far enough. And if you ask people in the peninsulas of this world, the inaccessible suburbs of the city, they'll tell you they're shouldering the intensification and they want a compact city-urban form, the ambition of Auckland, right? And yet, as I say all the time, it seems like all of these meetings are fighting against that compact city approach. And once again, we're having the same discussion over and over again. Look, I'm glad. It seems like the minister and the government are actually up for that compact city conversation. I'm pretty happy about that. We should be thanking the minister. Which, yeah, I mean, I don't thank the government that much, but I thank them for this. It's fantastic. Because, guys, look, the war on housing shortages is yet to be won. We've still got tens of thousands of houses short in this city. We still have homelessness rampant in this city. We still have need here, right? When you haven't won the war yet, you don't just stop. You keep fighting on. You know, for example, special character areas, and I say this all the time, but it's an unjustifiable market distortion that's actually putting up gated communities without the gate and the best land available in the city and in the country. Thankfully, I don't have to talk about that too much today because we're talking about today something that I think will be generally really positive. I'm a huge fan of option 3, actually. Look, honestly, I probably would go further. 3 is a compromise for me. But look, I just want to remind everybody the construction sector is so important as a part of our economy. The houses they produce obviously so important for families, for Aucklanders, and when you locate them in the right place, you suddenly get a modern world city that communities are built in, that people want to raise kids in, right? So there's no need to pump the brakes now. You know, we have to box on. I just urge councillors, look, I'm going to vote for this, and I'm going to vote for the amendment as well. But this complicated thing, staff, because if D doesn't pass, then I'm going to vote against the whole thing because that's really key to it for me. So I just hope that my vote will be reflected there. Yeah, look, let's get started in the city centre and let's just get on with it. Let's fix Auckland. Kia ora. Thank you.
Councillor Ferry.
Thank you. I did have a sort of a question around D, but I think it's probably more a point of debate, to be honest. So in terms of D, I mean, that to me does not look the same as option 3. It's a significant step down from option 3, and like Councillor Henderson, I probably would have preferred to support option 3, but that's not where the room's going, and I think I think the inclusion of D is a respectful way of moving forward on that aspect. I find myself feeling very uncomfortable about agreeing with Minister Chris Bishop about some aspects of this, but nonetheless that's where I am, and it's best to be honest about that. He has had conversations with us that indicate that he's only given us the extension on the basis that we do box on, is the term that's been used a lot. And I think D shows goodwill to attempt to box on, acknowledging that that's, you know, we're not going straight to boxing on. We're, I don't know, what are we doing? We're unwrapping the box first before we box on or something like that. It's probably a boxing metaphor and I've gone completely the wrong direction there. Sorry. My dad would be very ashamed as a former boxer. So, yes, I guess we're doing the warm up, aren't we? Yeah. Before the actual boxing, right? So, putting the gloves on. There we go. So, well, we're asking the independent hearing panel to help us put the gloves on, and if they don't want to put the gloves on, then we won't put the gloves on. But we are engaging in this with goodwill, in the direction that the Minister has indicated he was expecting us to go in order to grant us the exemption, noting that he didn't give an exemption to Christchurch. So I'm in that mind supportive of the inclusion of D. I would have preferred 3, but I think this is a good compromise and way forward. I'd like to just briefly mention, you know, we've had quite a bit of discussion today, and this is a repeated theme that comes up about the fact that there's a sense that we have enabled enough housing already, and I really am uncomfortable with that conclusion, because I do still see people in my area who are living in cars, who are living in situations where there are way more people in a house than that house is designed to take, people who want to live in different living situations than the housing stock that's provided in their community already, people who want to be able to live without cars and thus within a short walk of other transport options, traditional transport options like walking, cycling and public transport. So, you know, I do feel uncomfortable with the idea that we've done all we can do. We absolutely haven't, and we do have to keep going. We have ambitions around, which is the questions I was asking around the compact city, and we need to move forward on achieving that, not rest, sit back and go, the fight's over, the boxing match has been won or lost, or someone's had a technical KO or something, and we can just stop. We have to keep going, and so I will be voting for all of these resolutions. And thank you, Chair, for your incredible work. I know this has been happening behind the scenes for a long time to try and get to a position that people could support. I hope everyone does support this. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor, thank you. Councillor Lee, I'll see if you're back on. If you cut out again, that
Yep.
we won't be able to.
Technical, yeah, mate.
Sorry, Councillor, we can't hear you. The Wi-Fi in the Bay of Islands must be not good enough for connecting. Sorry, Councillor, we're going to have to move on. Apologies, but hopefully you can record your vote at the time. Councillor Newman.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. Look, I will be voting against D, but I will vote for the balance. The analogies are flying quite freely here today. I didn't realise I was here for a boxing match, and I didn't realise that we were in the middle of a war. I'm here for a planning meeting, and I want to come back to the substance of the arguments that have been presented, I think, in quite a factual and balanced way by the planning staff. And that would lead me to conclude that the most appropriate and responsible thing that we could do at this point is option 2. What we do have is an evidence standard which demonstrates a very significant amount of development-ready land in Auckland, and I suspect actually the quantum of land available is probably higher than that, and it will continue to, as the plan change requests come through, that number will continue to grow. If there is anything here, there is a need for us to recognise the fact that the hearings panel needs to deal with the matters at hand, which starts with the city centre, and with respect to the walkable catchments outside the city centre, there needs to be a process where all the parties have natural justice to be able to have that hearings as well, and to move to a point where they become operative at this point. Frankly, respectfully, Chair, you couldn't tell me the number, and the reason for that is that you don't know, and we don't know, but that's why we would have a hearings process, which will come later. Chair, I think the Mayor is right. What we're talking about is increasing the capacity of development-ready land and bring it to a market which is, I won't say it's dead, but it is depressed. We are in the middle of a recession here. There is an opportunity for us to continue and to complete this work in an orderly and sequenced way, but frankly, I can't vote for D because I don't want the Mayor to go to a meeting with the Minister with what I think is a set of resolutions that are not complementary. They contradict. Option 2 is a series of it's a recommended option with the advantages set down. It enables development. It would strengthen the provisions in relation to natural hazards. It would address it will address some public confusion and concern around MDRS. And frankly, if I were to have a look at my own ward, for example, Chair, I've got a walkable catchment that is comes up it's an abutment against an area subject to a qualifying matter because it's a significant ecological area. There are qualifying matters that have been agreed as per the plan change be notified. That would require a hearing. And I do not want that location, for example, which might not have a natural hazard actually, to suddenly become operative because we slipped in resolution D as per Chair's recommendations, respectfully. So Chair, I would ask that we don't support D, but we support the balance of the recommendations which have been proposed by officers for the reasons set out, and that the Mayor concludes his discussions with Minister Bishop. Minister Bishop has less evidence about the planning capacity of Auckland than we do. But what we will need to do is we will need to contribute to the legislation that the government will need to draft, and then we will need to, at a later date, come back with a variation to address MDRS, which will be helped if we don't pass option D, if we don't pass D in red today. So I support the balance, but when the division is called, I'll be voting against D. Thank you.
Councillor Newman, because you asked the question of clarification and I tried to give it, I just need to be very clear. D is like C. It would only become operative after hearings. This is not immediate legal effect. It says request the independent hearings panel consider progressing hearing topics on walkable catchments. That would mean they would have hearings along the... I just want to clarify with Megan, because I would not have put D in there if it was moving to a operative without hearings. That is not... Could I just have clarification, Megan?
Sure, through the chair, that's right. So this is not about legal effect. This is about through the process, continuing the hearings. The IHP would recommend to this committee for a decision, and then this committee would make a decision.
Yeah, just because you asked the clarification earlier, that was... I don't know if you missed that, but that is what the...
Chair, with respect, I asked clarification on a number of areas that would be unaffected, therefore become operative, for which the answer wasn't provided. But anyway, it's a debating point, but thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I just wanted to make a comment that Auckland's basically a basket case when it comes to housing affordability. It's caught in a housing affordability crisis from which the city seems to be unable to escape. Auckland is the 9th most affordable city in the entire world. The bulk of the blame of this rests squarely on Auckland Council, I believe, in terms of restrictive planning practices. It's basically a moral imperative. It's a sizzling political issue. What Aucklanders are constantly telling me is that the issue that matters most to them are issues that impact on their already stretched wallets. People care more about things like being able to save a deposit for a house, or paying for the mortgage or the rent, putting food on the table, or buying their kids' school uniforms. These are important and, in fact, fundamental living issues for them. You know, the housing prices in Auckland are incredibly unfair. They should be seen in the blunt terms of what they really are. Auckland is the 3rd most expensive city globally in the world in which to catch public transport. Basically, it costs about 9.2 to 10 times the median annual income to buy a home. To be affordable, and councillors have today explained the virtues of what they see as affordable as being okay where we sit. It's not. An affordable house is basically about 3 times the median annual household income. So we're way away from where we should land. We're not doing well. We aren't doing well. I don't think we have structured this recommendation in a way with central government that is going to bring housing into affordability, i.e. 3 times the annual household income. We're way away from it. We're going around in circles. It really disappoints me. However, I'll reflect the vote on the recommendations as best I can, but those are my comments, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Watson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of observations from my point. I certainly have a little difficulty recognising some of the glowing attributes to the housing in Auckland over the last decade. from my experience, it's a city now where the median house price is well over $1 million. And that's in some of the, the previously regarded as poorer houses. If we look at the rents, the average weekly rent is over $600. In many suburbs, one bedroom is $440, two $600, three bedrooms are $750, $800, $900. So I really having difficulty reconciling with the notion that somehow the housing policy of the last decade has produced outstanding results in terms of affordability. It most certainly hasn't, as the declining rate of home ownership, particularly amongst certain segments of the population, readily attest. And my concern is this ongoing almost ideological commitment to the route of Plan Change 78 just falls short of addressing the real issues that have been well and truly identified by housing academics in respect of the withdrawal of government funding for lower cost housing, not lower quality housing, but lower cost housing that was part of successive governments' policies throughout the 60s and 70s into the early 80s, which did result in housing affordability, which did result in lower levels of rentals. So my concern, Mr. Chair, is that in respect of the recommendations before us today, we're really in a position where we're being asked to continue this rather unimpressive path down the notion of greater intensification, almost ad lib, without any plan, somehow will be beneficial to our citizens. I was under the impression that when we wrote to the Minister early in February that indeed the possibility of withdrawing Plan Change 78 was being raised. And in my view, that's still the best way forward. It stops the current muddle and waste of hearings that our officers have referred to today. It would allow Auckland to update the unitary plan, which we spent the best part of 35 million on back in 2016, enabling 900,000 units around Auckland, which I think is still the figure. And that would allow us to take into account any changes the Minister may make to the MPS UD later in the year. And I guess most importantly, from a practical perspective, it would allow Auckland to prioritise up zoning where we know we have the infrastructure existing or planned. A lot of work has been done as a consequence of these impositions of the last government. So arguably that allows us even in a better position to make updates to the unitary plan that we alone as a council had put through such a rigorous process with much increased intensification and much controversy. Instead, we're looking again to just, upzone, continue a process that we ourselves said was fundamentally flawed. We put in some pretty strong submissions on this last year, and here we are, we're really de facto continuation of the process, and some of the people who have, presented themselves as making such a bold, heroic stands against other aspects of the government policy are still kind of continuing this notion of rather subservience. And when it's clear to me that the Minister is not as informed on Auckland as we may be assuming that he is. So why would you then be in a collaborationist role when you have got a opportunity to really send out a very strong signal as to what is going to be most appropriate to Auckland in light of those submissions we gave to this whole process before, and in light of the fact that there is a pause. So in those respects, a couple of specific recommendations there are of concern to me, Mr. Chair, as indeed is the overall direction really. So I'll have to weigh that up in my vote. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor, thank you. Councillor Filipaina.
Kia ora, Chair, and my humble apologies for not putting the camera on. I didn't want to go out and come back in and then miss my slot. But Chair, I just want to acknowledge John, the team in regards to this. And I mean, hearing some of the comments that I'm hearing and the doom and gloom, I go back to 2016, Chair, and councillors. I go back to an independent Māori statutory board, but I go back to 2016 when I ended up chairing the Auckland Unitary Plan through. And look, the fact that we ended up getting through about over 90% of what we wanted was a good thing. But I mean, if we go now to 2024 and I'm hearing the words basket case and I'm hearing all the doom and gloom, I think that's what concerns me, because maybe some people need to come out to the west and to the south to have a look at doom and gloom. Chair, I do also want to acknowledge the Director for Strategy. Megan, to you and legal, just to end up basically looking at D and working D and ensuring, because how I see D is that it's requesting, it's not saying to the Independent Hearings Panel, we want you to do this. It's requesting it, and as Megan said, and in her whakaaro to the pātai from Councillor Darby, that she will also be talking to the government staff dealing with this. So I applaud D, because it is a way forward for us, and the fact that the mayor has seconded this recommendation also, for me, adds substance to the fact that D is good and it is a compromise. So it's interesting looking at hearing everybody sort of talking about the doom and gloom, and I mean I haven't seen a recommendation yet that we withdraw sections 78. I mean, I PC 78. I haven't seen that, and if people wish to, I look forward to that. Also, for those that are saying it's a crisis, but they want to sort of constrain supply, more. I look. I'm not into that. I'm into the discussion that the mayor will have with the minister. I'm into the fact that the Director of Strategy and our legal team looked at this recommendation D and have said, yes, look, this is okay. It's a way forward and a compromise. So I will be voting for the lot. Kia ora, Chair.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor Filipaina. Deputy Mayor Simpson.
Maybe I'll be a little ray of sunshine. So I just want to say thank you, Chair, for your work around this, and to you, Megan and John. To be honest, when I came in here, I really thought that I might go for option 4, which is to pause everything till we'd had that conversation with government. But I had done a lot of work before today as well around that, as you know, Megan, and with the mayoral office. So I am comfortable where we have landed on option 2. I am not so confident about Chair's recommendation D, and I told you this in advance, Chair, because I think there's a whole lot of unknowns around it. I also think as far as housing capacity, I don't think the issue we have in Auckland is the fact that I don't think the reason that we're short of houses is the fact that we haven't got the land, because we've gone to all the trouble of the unitary plan. I think some of the issues around housing, the building of housing, is more around interest rates and the high cost of building materials and stuff at the moment. So I will be supporting all recommendations except for D. I want to finish by saying a comment to the Mayor, because I actually think that where we will get to in Auckland, Your Worship, relies very strongly on your conversation with the Minister. And, you know, I support your view that Wellington shouldn't tell Auckland what to do, that we should have a open conversation so that Wellington understands where Auckland sits. Wellington should understand that we have capacity in our planning rules. Wellington should understand that we are doing all that we can to meet actually the government's direction, but we already had that capacity, didn't we, as part of the unitary plan. So, Your Worship, you know, Auckland's planning and housing and direction really rests on that meeting that you have with the Minister, and I'm sure it won't be just one of them. I would also advise, or suggest, I should say, that you don't leave the Director of Strategy and John outside the door, you actually bring them in with you, because I think that that can only benefit the conversation. But at the end of the day, I think basically a lot of us are on the same plan for option 2 now, and all power to you, Your Worship, in those debates and discussion, because, as I said, Auckland's future in this issue is as a result of those conversations. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I just wanted, on behalf of the people I speak to, disconnect this supply and demand. It's never worked. We've got empirical evidence now. We've sat there for 2 decades and been told supply and demand will bring the price of houses down. Never has. They're growing like mushrooms on mushrooms, and they're getting dearer every day. I'll be making my vote based on what makes us the most livable city, and we'll concentrate on why it's such a dear city in a debate which that actually matters, where that's the right place to debate it. I'll be voting against D and supporting the substantive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm disappointed that we don't have an option 4 around the withdrawal of Plan Change 78. That doesn't appear to be the case. Perhaps there isn't the support for it around the table. I have a real concern around the information that gets presented, and what I would suggest, Mr. Chair, is it would be very helpful if we had some analysis around the housing situation in New Zealand and the impact of the legislation to date. I would suggest that the consequence of zoning more land is that you fuel speculation, so the underlying cost of land across the region increases everywhere, and effectively housing becomes less and less affordable. And by upzoning without any payback to council for value uplift, we continue to not be able to support infrastructure, so our financial situation overall becomes progressively worse. Now, I don't think that analysis has thus far been presented to the government in the way that it should be. It really should be, because otherwise we just dig ourselves a bigger housing hole, and frankly an even worsening financial hole. So that is my concern. I don't think that D helps the circumstance at all. It only makes matters worse. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Leone.
I'll just make mine really brief. I just want to acknowledge the work of all the staff and yourself, Chair. I will be supporting all the resolutions today, including D. And, you know, I think that some of the other councillors have brought up some valid points around, obviously, affordability. But we know that will need to be another conversation. What we need to focus on is boxing on, as been said before, and just moving things forward. So kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Darby.
Thanks, Chair. Just at the outset, I just want to note that no one has put up the option 4. You know, this is a political process. It's one thing to utter statements about disappointment that there is no option 4, but all of us can put up amendments, and it's not there. So no running away from the fact that it's not on the table because a politician hasn't put it on the table. But that said, I want to say I do support option 2 as it's summarised in the report and for the reasons in the report too, and given orally in follow-up reinforcing what was outlined. I could not come to support option 3. And one of the key reasons there is the issue of natural justice not being served if we were to run with option 3. I think it's, you know, the public confusion over that, the additional costs to the citizens of Auckland and to council has to be considered. The integration with the Auckland Light Rail corridor, and then the enmeshing of the medium density residential standards with the walkable catchments. It is very complex, and I think we'd be redoing it unnecessarily. Recommendation D is interesting, and I've turned my mind to this, and I've looked at pretty much every word in that recommendation. It leaves the door just ever so slightly ajar on option 3. That's what it does. It doesn't open it, it doesn't close it. But should we, as governors, leave the door ajar, or should we be clear? It's open or it's closed. I'm more of a mind to be clear in our decision. It's either open or it's closed. I'm looking at the words, and I think, and I say this with greatest respect to those that have penned it, it's cleverly caveated. In some ways it's a weak suggestion. You know, it's got words like request, consider, and then we go on to where practicable, and we've seen the word practicable in the Minister Bishop's letter. But when we unpack the where practicable, we've been told it's not practicable. Okay, we've seen that in the report, and we've asked questions about that today, and we've been told it's not practicable. We know the answer to that. But then we go on and suggest to the IHP they might like to consider again. I think that's not taking responsibility here. We should be taking responsibility for the direction as we are with the balance of the recommendations. And so look, I don't really want to just leave the door ajar. I'd like to make it clear that the door is open or it's shut. And therefore, I can't bring my support to option D, but I do for all the balance.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Brown.
I wasn't really going to speak, but I feel I should now after this. I agreed this morning that I would be happy to second the movement to support option 2. And Councillor Hills has put forward option D, which I'm a bit lukewarm about, and having heard the debate about this, I'm very much in favour of option 2, but I probably won't vote for option D. I want clarity when I get in the room with this minister. He's very forthright and blunt. I've reread the National Housing Going for Growth thing. I think if I've got to meet with a blunt person, I've got to be blunt. So I will be voting in favour of the whole thing strongly, but I'm quite happy to drop D. And I'm more of a street fighter, I've got to say. We don't have gloves.
Councillor Bartley.
Oh, thank you. I have no analogies. I'm just trying to kind of grasp the effect that this will have on what we see out in our communities. Definitely, as a governor, I see the haves and the have-nots very, very clearly. And I mean, I'm going to support whatever will encourage more housing in our city, because I see so many that don't have the opportunity to live under a roof. Fridays is usually my busiest day when people message me on Facebook desperate for somewhere to live. I had a mum and her children message me. They were hiding out at Mission Bay because the husband or the boyfriend was smashing up the state house that they were in. So they were looking for somewhere to live. It's Friday nights. But yeah, I think I'm going way off. I don't know. I'm trying to see what is the importance of the decisions we make here at this table, on this item, sitting around this table with the reality that is out there. It's embarrassing that landlords think that they can charge people to live in a garage. That's embarrassing for a city. But maybe we do have capacity out there because we are renting out garages to people to live in. So yeah, I don't know. I have apartments in my area that are going up all over the show, and it's $1 million to get in them. And then you have people that are living in their cars in the wharf down the road. So anyway, other people are going off on things, so that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Kia ora, councillor. Thank you. Right, I'll just finish up, and thank you. And it does sound like Dee is going to lose, but I do need to preface where we've come from, and I have been trying to do a lot of work on this with the Mayor's office, with staff, ministry. This has been a very complex situation, especially for our community. But we wrote letters last year and early this year and got the response. The response was very clear, and now I've lost the letter, haven't I? I will update my direction to Auckland Council with a new statement of expectations so we can notify a plan change around the risk of natural hazards with the light rail corridor, but we need to continue to progress the parts of the plan change 78 subject to policy 3 and 4 of the National Policy Statement of Urban Development where practical. I know we've had the advice of where practical, but so the city centre zone and the D is about trying our best to take up this advice and show our direction. If the independence hearing panel comes back and says this is impossible, which is very likely to happen, it will show the minister what needs to change in the legislation to allow us to do what they are requesting. The other thing that's important to note is the MDRS is already, immediate legal effect came into place in 2022. There are people building MDRS all over the city without resource consent right now. The MPSUD did not become legal or operative at the time, but the MDRS is. The MPSUD parts, which in the Mayor's manifesto said that he supported and the MDRS did not support, that the MPSUD components actually is what we're talking about through the FDS, and every other thing is about building in the right place, building around metro centres, building around train stations, bus stations, etc. This is not going to change the eventual place of the walkable catchments. If this is delayed, it just means the walkable catchments come a year later. We are not changing, and we cannot, and the legislation will not change anything to do with the MPSUD or the walkable catchments. What it will change or might change is the MDRS. I just worry if we don't try and follow the direction the minister has. Essentially, he waited several months to write back to us and then said, okay, I'll let you do this variation as long as you do these things. The legislation is coming at the end of the year or maybe even next year, and it may not allow us to do these things if we're not following the direction, because that is what happened last government before with special housing areas. This happens all the time to Auckland. We don't get to choose our planning. So what I was trying to do was trying to be reasonable, sort of be thankful the minister was letting us change the parts around hazards, around the MDRS, around the light rail corridor, which we really need to be done together. And the other bits was trying to progress through hearings, not making operative without hearings. Everything will be with hearings, apart from the MDRS, because that's already in play. So, but I welcome support, but I feel like I need to show the intention because I have been writing letters and back and forth with the minister. And funnily enough, you know, with the GPS discussions yesterday, everyone says we must just forget our intentions as a council. We must follow the government direction on the GPS. And on this, it seems like some people will just ignore it. They're never going to let us withdraw it. They've been very clear on that. And they will not let us go back to the unitary plan. They've been very clear on that. So this is about going forward and how we deal with that. And I hope when we talk to the minister and when that legislation happens, which we hope this will rush it forward so we have certainty and the IHP has certainty and the community has certainty, we will then have a plan to go forward on. The timeline is not ours. We wish it wasn't like this, but it is. Right. So I'm going to put D first. Is that?
We were going to do A.
Okay, we might do A. Okay, we'll do A to B.
A, B, C. Everything but D.
Okay, I think we'll do D. There's a couple of councillors who said, I don't want to support the whole thing if D doesn't go through. So I think that if that's okay.
Okay. So we're doing a division?
Yeah, so we're doing a division on D.
Thank you, members. You're voting for the clause D, which is on your screen. Chair Hulls.
In favour.
Member Ashby.
Aye.
Councillor Baker.
Against?
Councillor Bartley.
For.
Mayor Brown. Councillor Darby.
Against.
Councillor Ferry.
For.
Councillor Filipina.
Aye.
Councillor Fletcher.
No.
Councillor Foley.
For.
Member Henare.
In favour.
Councillor Henderson.
Of course.
Councillor Leone.
For.
Councillor Newman.
Against.
Councillor Sayers.
No. Against.
Deputy Mayor Simpson.
Against.
Councillor Stewart.
Against.
Councillor Turner.
Against?
Councillor Walker.
Against?
Councillor Watson.
No.
Councillor Williamson.
No.
Okay, that's declared lost.
Your councillors, that was lost 12-9. And now we move to the substantive motion. And do we want a division on that, or are we happy to do by the voices? Right? All those in favour?
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
Aye.
Sorry, are there any?
No.
So Councillor Henderson, you're
Against.
opposed?
Against, yeah, thanks.
Councillor Henderson and Councillor Watson opposed. Was there any other opposition to that?
Against?
Councillor Walker opposed. Just checking.
And that's being recorded?
And those are being recorded, councillors, I assume.
Yes, please.
Any abstentions?
Absolutely.
Cool, thank you very much. That was a mammoth task. Thank you for all trying to get somewhere. Thank you for the community for being here. And we will continue to update you on where to from here. Kia ora and thank you very much. Right, we're going to have a half an hour break for lunch. I think it's only fair to everyone involved. So we'll be back here at 1:05.